Are you serious? Do you really believe that a machine thinks? I got no immediate reply. Moxon was apparently intent upon the coals in the grate, touching them deftly here and there with a fire poker till they signified a sense of his attention by a brighter glow. For several weeks I had been observing in him a growing habit of delay in answering even the most trivial of commonplace questions. Presently he said, "What is a machine?" The word has been variously defined. Any instrument or organization by which power is applied and made effective, or a desired effect produced. Well then, is not a man a machine? And you will admit that he thinks, or thinks he thinks. You know well enough that when I say machine, I do not mean a man, but something that man has made and controls. When it does not control him, he said, rising abruptly and looking out of a window, whence nothing was visible in the blackness of a stormy night. I believe that a machine thinks about the work that it is doing. That was direct enough, certainly. It was not altogether pleasing, for it tended to confirm a sad suspicion that Moxon's devotion to study and work in his machine shop had not been good for him. I knew, for one thing, that he suffered from insomnia, and that is no light affliction. Had it affected his mind? His reply to my question seemed to me then evidence that it had. And what, pray, does it think with, in the absence of a brain? With what does a plant think, in the absence of a brain? Ah, plants also belong to the philosopher class? Perhaps, he replied. Observe this. In an open spot in my garden, I planted a climbing vine. When it was barely above the surface, I set a stake into the soil a yard away. The vine at once made for it, but as it was about to reach it after several days, I removed it a few feet. The vine at once altered its course, making an acute angle, and again made for the stake. This maneuver was repeated several times, but finally, as if discouraged, the vine abandoned the pursuit and, ignoring further attempts to divert it, traveled to a small tree farther away, which it climbed. And all this, can you miss the significance of it? It shows the consciousness of plants. It proves that they think. Moxon was speaking with unusual animation and earnestness. As he paused, I heard in an adjoining room, known to me as his machine shop, which no one but himself was permitted to enter, a singular thumping sound, as of someone pounding a table with an open hand. Moxon heard it at the same time, and, visibly agitated, rose and hurriedly passed into the room whence it came. My interest in my friend, with doubtless a touch of unwarranted curiosity, led me to listen intently, though I am happy to say not at the keyhole. There were confused sounds as of a struggle or scuffle. The floor shook. I distinctly heard hard breathing and a hoarse whisper which said, "Damn you." Then all was silent, and presently Moxon reappeared and said with a rather sorry smile, "Pardon me for leaving you so abruptly. I have a machine in there that lost its temper and cut up rough." Fixing my eyes steadily upon his left cheek, which was traversed by 4 parallel excoriations showing blood, I said, "How would it do to trim its nails?" I could have spared myself the jest. He gave it no attention, but seated himself in the chair that he had left and resumed the interrupted monologue as if nothing had occurred. "There is no such thing as dead, inert matter. It is all alive. If a man during his period of activity is alive, so is a machine when in operation. As an inventor and constructor of machines, I know that to be true." Moxon was silent for a long time, gazing absently into the fire. It was growing late, and I thought it time to be going, but somehow I did not like the notion of leaving him in that isolated house all alone, except for the presence of some person of whose nature my conjectures could go no further than that it was unfriendly, perhaps malign. Leaning toward him and looking earnestly into his eyes, while making a motion with my hand through the door of his workshop, I said, "Moxon, whom have you in there?" Somewhat to my surprise, he laughed lightly and answered without hesitation, "Nobody. The incident that you have in mind was caused by my folly in leaving a machine in action, with nothing to act upon, while I undertook the interminable task of enlightening your understanding. I'm going to wish you good night, I replied, rising and laying hold of my overcoat. And I'll add the hope that the machine which you inadvertently left in action will have her gloves on the next time you think it needful to stop her. Without waiting to observe the effect of my shot, I left the house. Rain was falling and the darkness was intense. In the sky, beyond the crest of the hill towards which I groped my way along precarious plank sidewalks and across miry, unpaved streets, I could see a faint glow of the city's lights. But behind me, nothing was visible but a single window of Moxon's house. It glowed with what seemed to me a mysterious and fateful meaning. I knew it was an uncurtained aperture in my friend's machine shop. And yielding to an impulse, I had unconsciously turned about, and almost before I was aware of having done so, found myself again at Moxon's door. I was drenched with rain, but felt no discomfort. Unable in my excitement to find the doorbell, I instinctively tried the knob. It turned, and entering, I mounted the stairs to the room that I had so recently left. All was dark and silent. I had never been invited into the machine shop, had indeed been denied admittance, as had all others, with one exception, a skilled metal worker of whom no one knew anything except that his name was Haley, and his habit, silence. But in my exaltation, discretion and civility were alike forgotten, and I opened the door. Moxon sat facing me at the farther side of a small table, upon which a single candle made all the light that was in the room. Opposite him, his back toward me, sat another person. On the table between the two was a chessboard. The men were playing. Moxon was intensely interested, not so much, it seemed to me, in the game, as in his antagonist, upon whom he had fixed so intent a look that, standing though I did, directly in the line of his vision, I was altogether unobserved. His face was ghastly white, and his eyes glittered like diamonds. Of his antagonist I had only a back view, but that was sufficient. I should not have cared to see his face. He was apparently not more than 5 feet in height, with proportions suggesting those of a gorilla, a tremendous breadth of shoulders, thick, short neck, and broad, squat head, which had a tangled growth of black hair and was topped with a crimson fez. A tunic of the same colour, belted tightly to the waist, reached the seat, apparently a box upon which he sat. His legs and feet were not seen. His left forearm appeared to rest in his lap. He moved his pieces with his right hand, which seemed disproportionately long. Something forbade me either to enter or to retire, a feeling, I know not how it came, that I was in the presence of an imminent tragedy, and might serve my friend by remaining. The play was rapid. Moxon hardly glanced at the board before making his moves. The response of his antagonist, while equally prompt in the inception, was made with a slow, uniform, mechanical, and, I thought, somewhat theatrical movement of the arm. That was a sore trial to my patience. There was something unearthly about it all, and I caught myself shuddering, but I was wet and cold. 2 or 3 times after moving a piece, the stranger slightly inclined his head, and each time I observed that Moxon shifted his king. All at once the thought came to me that the man was dumb, and then that he was a machine, an automaton chess player. Then I remembered that Moxon had once spoken to me of having invented such a piece of mechanism, though I did not understand that it had actually been constructed. And something occurred to hold my curiosity. I observed a shrug of the thing's great shoulders, as if it were irritated. And so natural was this, so entirely human, that in my new view of the matter it startled me. Nor was that all, for a moment later it struck the table sharply with its clenched hand. At that gesture, Moxon seemed even more startled than I. He pushed his chair a little backward as in alarm. Presently, Moxon, whose play it was, raised his hand high above the board, pounced upon one of his pieces, like a sparrowhawk, and with the exclamation, "Checkmate," rose quickly to his feet and stepped behind his chair. The automaton sat motionless. The wind had now gone down. but I heard at lessening intervals and progressively louder the rumble and roll of thunder. In the pauses between, I now became conscious of a low humming or buzzing, which, like the thunder, grew momentarily louder and more distinct. It seemed to come from the body of the automaton and was unmistakably a whirring of wheels. Suddenly it sprang to its feet, and with a movement almost too quick for the eye to follow, shot forward across the table and chair, with both arms thrust forward to their full length, the posture and lunge of a diver. Moxon tried to throw himself backward out of reach, but he was too late. I saw the horrible thing's hands close upon his throat. His own clutched its wrists. Then the table was overturned, the candle thrown to the floor and extinguished. All was black dark, but the noise of the struggle was dreadfully distinct. Guided by the infernal hubbub, I sprang to the rescue of my friend, but had hardly taken a stride in the darkness when the whole room blazed with a blinding white light that burned into my brain and heart and memory a vivid picture of the combatants on the floor, Moxon underneath, his throat still in the clutch of those iron hands, his head forced backward, his eyes protruding, his mouth wide open and his tongue thrust out, and horrible contrast. Upon the painted face of his assassin, an expression of tranquil and profound thought, as in the solution of a problem in chess. This I observed. Then all was blackness and silence. 3 days later, I recovered consciousness in a hospital. As the memory of that tragic night slowly evolved in my ailing brain, I recognized in my attendant Moxon's confidential workman, Haley. "Tell me about it." "You were carried unconscious from a burning house. Moxon's. Nobody knows how you came to be there. You may have to do a little explaining. And Moxon, buried yesterday, what was left of him." After some moments of the keenest mental suffering, I ventured to ask another question. "Who rescued me?" "I did." "Thank you, Mr. Haley, and may God bless you for it. Did you rescue also that charming product of your skill, the automaton chess player that murdered its inventor?" The man was silent a long time, looking away from me. "Do you know that?" "I do," I replied. "I saw it done. That was many years ago. If asked today, I should answer less confidently.